There is a man who earned over $180 million playing football and still rotates through the same small collection of clothes every single week. There is another who saved over 80% of his NFL earnings while proudly wearing costume jewelry he picked up at a mall kiosk for $20. And then there is the guy who literally lived inside a stadium to avoid paying rent. Not because he was struggling, because he refused to let a direct deposit change who he fundamentally was. Most people think NFL wealth looks a specific way. The Lamborghini in the circular driveway, the mansion tour posted the same week the signing bonus cleared, the watch collection that costs more than most people's homes, and for some players, that is exactly the story. But there is a different group operating in a completely different direction. Men who earned life-changing money and then made the radical decision to keep living like the version of themselves that existed before any of it arrived. Not out of fear, not out of ignorance, but because they understood something most people only figure out after the damage is already done. A big contract does not build wealth. The gap between what you earn and what you choose to spend is the only thing that actually builds wealth. And these men protected that gap like it was the most important position on the field. We are counting down 10 extremely wealthy black NFL players who live like they are poor. And by the time we reach number 1, you will understand exactly why quiet money almost always outlasts loud money. Number 10, Christian Wilkins, the first-round pick who treated millions like a rainy day fund. When the Miami Dolphins selected Christian Wilkins 13th overall in the 2019 NFL Draft, the financial math shifted dramatically in his favor before he played a single professional snap. A fully guaranteed rookie contract worth more than $15 million. A fifth-year option worth another $10 million already on the horizon. By every reasonable measure, he had every justification to exhale and let the lifestyle expand. But Wilkins did not exhale. He stayed deliberate. He rented modestly, while other first-round picks were already deep in mortgage conversations. He treated his signing bonus like it belonged to a future version of himself that had not yet been tested. Fixed expenses stayed intentionally low, which is genuinely rare for a player who already knows the money is guaranteed. During off-seasons, Wilkins flew budget airlines, not reluctantly, deliberately. He moved through airports, blending in with families and college students, while teammates passed through private terminals. No supercar rotation, no attention-grabbing purchases, just reliable transportation that served its purpose without demanding any recognition. Even food became part of the discipline. He leaned on team meal facilities and cooked at home when possible, not because delivery was a financial stretch, but because convenient spending quietly trains the brain to optimize for comfort over efficiency. And comfort is expensive when it becomes the default setting. What separates Wilkins from players who found discipline only after a rough financial year is that his habits predated the money entirely. At Clemson, he biked to class, worked as a substitute teacher for $80 a day, and stretched free powdered drink packets into homemade lemonade. Those were not desperate survival moves. They were efficiency moves, and they followed him directly into the NFL. Wilkins understood that wealth does not disappear because income drops. It disappears because expenses refuse to come down when income does. By keeping those expenses flat from day one, he built a buffer most players spend years scrambling to construct after the damage is already visible. Number 9, Darius Hayward-Bay, the top 10 pick who put his Moem on payroll. Darius Hayward-Bay arrived in the NFL with the kind of moment that historically produces expensive mistakes. He was the 7th overall pick in 2009 with a rookie contract worth roughly $23 million and a national spotlight under the Oakland Raiders' expectations. For most players, that combination turned spending into pure reflex. For Hayward-Bay, it triggered a structural decision that shaped his entire financial life. He handed control to his mother, not symbolically, but structurally. His mother, a certified accountant, managed the cash flow, reviewed major purchases, tracked spending patterns across categories, and treated his career earnings like a business with formal reporting. Hayward-Bay lived on a monthly allowance he chose deliberately because he understood something most 22-year-olds with millions will never openly admit. He was not immune to the environment surrounding him. In a league where autonomy almost always becomes temptation, he replaced freedom with structure. Teammates described his day-to-day life as calm, grounded, almost boring, and for a top 10 NFL draft pick, boring is genuinely the target. One detail captures his logic perfectly. During an active season, he canceled his cable subscription, not because the bill was any kind of strain, but because he audited his time and realized he was rarely home long enough to watch it. Every recurring expense had to earn its place. The ones that could not were eliminated without sentiment. By retirement, after 9 seasons and roughly $35 million in career earnings, there was no scrambling, no cautionary tale being workshopped for conference appearances. There was margin, clarity, and genuine peace. Number 8, Glover Quin, the undrafted player who let math do all the talking. Glover Quin entered the NFL undrafted in 2009. No guaranteed money, no hype, no sense that football owed him anything at all. That awareness never left him across 10 professional seasons and more than $40 million in career earnings. From the beginning, he operated by one rule: spend 30%, store 70%. Everything composing his daily life had to fit inside that 30% ceiling. The remaining 70% moved automatically into savings and investments before he had any realistic opportunity to redirect it. Over time, that habit stopped requiring discipline. It became muscle memory. The decision was already made, which meant there was no decision left to tempt him each month. At one point, Quin was living on approximately $6,000 per month while earning millions annually. He drove the same Yukon Denali he bought early in his career, even after signing a $23.5 million deal with the Detroit Lions. Teammates called him cheap, with the affection reserved for someone whose habits you quietly respect even while joking about them. Quin never argued it. He understood that every dollar not spent on depreciating lifestyle was a dollar that could eventually purchase freedom from the necessity of earning it all. He majored in business and treated football income as startup capital rather than lottery winnings. By retirement, Quin publicly stated his investment portfolio had grown larger than his total NFL earnings combined. Football paid him well. Investing paid him longer. He never confused which role each was supposed to play. Number 7, Frank Gore, the running back who treated his body and his money like a long-term contract. Running backs are not supposed to last. The position consumes players faster than almost any other in professional sports. Most get 5 years if they are fortunate. Frank Gore played 16 seasons. That number demands an explanation. The explanation applies to his finances with exactly the same force it applies to his career longevity. Gore entered the league in 2005 as a third-round pick, with no instant superstar treatment and no pressure to perform a persona before the performance itself had been established. He arrived with the mentality of a tradesman: show up, execute, protect your tools, and do not mortgage tomorrow chasing what today is offering. The tools part extended far beyond his physical body into everything football generated financially. Rather than funneling earnings into luxury purchases that produce no return, Gore invested in his own professional longevity, training staff, advanced recovery methods, conditioning investments that players at his position routinely skipped. For Gore, these were not optional extras, they were infrastructure. Every additional season he extracted from his body was another contract, another year of earnings, another layer of financial insulation between himself and whatever life after football required. What you did not see from Gore across 16 seasons was equally important. No luxury brand campaigns, no rotating vehicle collections. His properties leaned toward family functionality rather than celebrity theater. He poured time and resources into youth football programs in Miami without making the generosity the centerpiece of his public identity. Gore's version of wealth never needed to announce itself because it never needed external validation to feel real. Number 6. Chad Johnson, the loudest man in every room, who spent like a committed minimalist. Chad Johnson has never approached anything subtly in his life. His personality, his end zone celebrations, his confidence, and his decision to legally rename himself after his jersey number. He arrived in the NFL in 2001 as a must-watch event disguised as a wide receiver. So when you learn that Ochocinco is one of the most financially disciplined stars of his generation, it sounds like the setup for a joke. That contrast is exactly why his story belongs here. Early in his career, Johnson moved into the Bengals stadium. He used the team locker room, the cafeteria, and facility resources instead of renting an apartment. No lease, no utility payments, no landlord, just a man who recognized what was already available, already paid for, and already producing the outcomes he needed, and concluded there was no rational justification for recreating those services somewhere else at his own expense. He has said he saved over 80% of his NFL earnings. When you look at how he actually lived, that number stops sounding like an exaggeration. He delayed real estate purchases until the timing genuinely made sense. He leased practical vehicles instead of acquiring expensive ones outright. He flew commercial without embarrassment because he understood that embarrassment about saving is simply vanity in disguise. And then there is the jewelry situation. While peers stacked diamonds worth more than most people's homes, Johnson wore costume pieces from mall stores and told anyone who asked that his chain cost $20, not because he could not afford the real version, because he found the economics sensible and the performance of it genuinely entertaining. After football, he invested in McDonald's franchise locations, creating income streams that generate revenue independent of his cultural relevance. Chad Johnson proved you can be the loudest presence in any room and still operate with the financial discipline that most quieter people never manage to achieve. Number 5. Warrick Dunn, the superstar who used his wealth to rewrite someone else's story. Warrick Dunn's relationship with money operates from a different foundational premise than everyone else on this list. His approach never centered on what he could accumulate. It centered on what he could make permanently possible for people without his leverage. Drafted 12th overall in 1997, Dunn built a long, respected career between Tampa Bay and Atlanta, generating over $60 million along the way. He could have lived at the scale that number makes available, and nobody would have questioned it. Instead, he kept his personal lifestyle deliberately restrained and redirected what most players pour into personal consumption towards something with a considerably longer time horizon. In 2002, he founded Warrick Dunn Charities. His Homes for the Holidays program provided single mothers transitioning out of hardship with down payments on fully furnished homes. Not keys to an empty structure, but furniture, appliances, groceries stocked, and utilities covered for the opening period. Everything required to actually begin building stability rather than just technically owning a property. By the mid-2000s, more than 150 families had received homes. Thousands of lives were permanently redirected because one man decided money should move outward rather than accumulate inward. The personal context matters enormously. Dunn's mother, a police officer, was killed in the line of duty when he was a teenager. He understood from direct and devastating experience how quickly stability can be stripped from a family without warning. Rather than hoarding security as a response to that knowledge, he distributed it as deliberately as he could with what football provided. His identity never bent toward luxury performance. His brand stayed tied to service, follow-through, and impact measured in lives rather than assets. Number 4. Malcolm Jenkins. He is the player who treated his entire NFL career as seed capital. Malcolm Jenkins earns his place on this list because his financial journey did not begin with perfect clarity. He did not arrive in the league with a fully formed philosophy ready for immediate deployment. He had to construct it honestly by sitting with a bank balance that looked meaningful on the surface and slowly recognizing that even that number would eventually stop being enough unless it was taught to grow on its own. That recognition produced structure. He built Malcolm Incorporated, a formal holding company positioned above every financial decision he makes. Real wealth does not float loosely in individual accounts waiting for impulsive decisions. It lives inside organized systems. Through that structure came Broad Street Ventures, a $10 million venture capital fund built to back companies founded by Black and brown entrepreneurs. The portfolio includes Airbnb, Epic Games, Instacart, and Udemy. These are companies embedded into the daily routines of millions of people. Jenkins was not chasing hype, he was buying into infrastructure that functions whether he is relevant or not. His real estate approach followed identical logic. One of his early acquisitions was a fully occupied apartment building purchased through a credit line rather than a conventional mortgage. Cash flow mattered more than aesthetics. Control mattered more than appearances. His willingness to discuss failures publicly, naming bad investments openly, and acknowledging that the path was not linear is what makes him genuinely resonate beyond the portfolio results alone. Transparency is part of the strategy, and it helps turn seed money into lasting capital. Number 3. Marshawn Lynch, beast mode on the field and something remarkably close to accountant precision underneath. Marshawn Lynch presents one of the most compelling financial contradictions on this entire list. The public persona is one of the most entertaining things professional football has ever produced. The financial architecture underneath it is precise enough to belong in a business school curriculum. That gap between how he performs publicly and how he actually operates financially is the complete story. Early in his career, Lynch made one foundational decision that inverted the standard athlete script. His NFL salary was not spending money. It was an untouchable capital. Daily life, travel, and entertainment all came from endorsement income. Endorsements from Nike, Skittles, Pepsi, Microsoft, and Progressive. Those checks funded his present. His football earnings accumulated quietly in the background rather than evaporating into lifestyle before the season was even finished. That discipline alone positions him in rare territory among players at his level of fame and earning power. Beyond preservation, he moved toward genuine ownership, stakes in the Seattle Kraken, equity in Oakland Roots, SC, investment positions in NRG Esports and the Professional Fighters League, technology stakes in companies operating at the intersection of entertainment and next-generation media, long-term ownership positions in industries where compounding upside operates over decades rather than quarters. The personal lifestyle remained notably grounded through all of it. Stories about Lynch examining menu prices carefully and selecting more economical options are not media inventions. They are consistent and documented. His spending philosophy was uncomplicated. If something does not meaningfully improve your actual life, it is noise. And he maintained a low tolerance for noise regardless of what his balance sheet would have supported. His most quoted line, "Take care of your chicken," was financial philosophy delivered in his own language. Protect your base. Do not allow image expenses to consume the capital that ownership positions could be building. Beast mode was never just an attitude, it was a complete system running quietly beneath everything visible. Number 2. Alvin Kamara, the modern superstar who budgeted his way to something more valuable than luxury. Alvin Kamara lands near the top of this list because he is still active, still earning significant contracts in one of the most financially seductive environments professional sports creates, and still openly rejecting the premise that success has to perform itself loudly to carry any real meaning. He has said repeatedly in interviews that he tracks his spending obsessively, not casually, obsessively. Categories, monthly patterns, running totals, everything reviewed with the attention a serious business owner applies to a quarterly audit. The motivation is not fear, it is the desire to maintain genuine control, to know with certainty that his money is moving where he directed it rather than drifting toward whatever the surrounding culture suggested was appropriate for someone at his income level. Each new contract did not unlock a new lifestyle tier. It increased the volume flowing into savings, investments, and long-term planning while the daily baseline stayed steady. That distinction is simple to describe and genuinely difficult to execute when you are a celebrated athlete in your mid-20s surrounded by peers who define success entirely by what can be seen and verified externally. His self-awareness about the social pressure involved is what makes Kamara particularly compelling here. He has talked openly about recognizing and actively resisting the subtle signals that push players towards spending more simply because everyone around them is spending more. He identifies those signals accurately. He simply does not follow them. Kamara represents something genuinely new in the conversation around NFL wealth. A current superstar who frames financial discipline not as deprivation, but as the most direct available path to the kind of freedom that money is supposed to produce but rarely does when it is spent as fast as it arrives. Number 1. Larry Fitzgerald. The quiet final destination of everything this list has been building toward. Larry Fitzgerald earned more than $180 million in salary and bonuses across 17 seasons with the Arizona Cardinals. That sum places him among the highest-earning wide receivers in the documented history of professional football. And yet, if you encountered him on an unremarkable afternoon, nothing about his presentation would signal anything extraordinary. The same clothes cycling through his wardrobe year after year, a public presence so deliberately minimal it barely registers, interviews that consistently redirect toward teammates, preparation, and community rather than anything he personally owns or has acquired. Drafted 3rd overall in 2004, he arrived as a superstar in waiting and then exceeded those expectations with such consistency across such an extended timeline that the achievement eventually stopped generating the surprise it deserved. 11 Pro Bowl selections, second all-time in receptions when he retired. The Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, NFL's 100th anniversary all-time team, and through every contract renegotiation, through every season layering onto the legacy, his personal life stayed anchored in a way that defied the gravitational pull the league creates around its most celebrated players. His endorsement philosophy operated with the same precision his routes always did. His partnerships included Nike, TNT, Visa, Bose, and Lenovo. Not loud fashion collaborations chasing short-lived cultural moments, but long-term corporate relationships with brands that valued consistency over viral visibility. He aligned with companies that matched his actual temperament, rather than companies that would maximize his exposure briefly before redirecting their attention to the next available face. After football, he moved quietly into rooms where decisions with real consequences happen. He became a minority owner of the Phoenix Suns with meaningful governance involvement. Larry Fitzgerald Enterprises backed more than 160 companies across technology, wellness, hospitality, and real estate. Calculated equity stakes paired with advisory involvement and long-term structural upside, rather than celebrity access to deal flow dressed up as investment activity. And then there is the real estate patience that deserves specific attention. He acquired a Paradise Valley property for approximately $3 million, held it without urgency, improved it thoughtfully, and sold it years later for roughly $18 million. That transaction is not exciting the way a headline-generating purchase is exciting, but it is the kind of result that serious financial professionals study because it requires patience, clear judgment about underlying value, and the confidence to let time do its work without interference. Day to day, Fitzgerald moved through his career like someone who resolved long ago that his identity was not available for purchase. His community work through his foundation consistently drew more genuine attention than anything he owns. He approached professional football the way the best practitioners approach any elite endeavor. Master the craft, extend the career as long as honest assessment allows, and invest everything the career produces into something with a longer horizon than the career itself. Many players spend their professional lives constructing evidence that they made it. The possessions, the appearances, the carefully curated documentation of a life that looks like success from every available angle. Larry Fitzgerald spent 17 seasons building something quieter and measurably more durable. A portfolio of assets, relationships, investments, and real community impact that functions and compounds regardless of whether his name appears in any current conversation. That is the thread connecting every player on this list. From Christian Wilkins keeping expenses flat from day one to Darius Hayward-Bay building a system with someone wiser holding the controls, to Glover Quin running the same 30-70 split through a decade of growing contracts, to Gore investing in longevity as financial strategy, to Chad Johnson making discipline part of the performance, to Warrick Dunn redirecting wealth entirely outward, to Malcolm Jenkins building infrastructure before chasing returns, to Marshawn Lynch converting personality into equity rather than consumption, to Alvin Kamara tracking every dollar while peers perform theirs online. All of them show a pattern of discipline. The common thread is not deprivation, it is not fear, it is a decision made early and protected consistently. The decision that the version of yourself that existed before the money arrived is worth keeping, because that version knows how to live without excess, which means the version holding the money can build something that actually survives contact with time. That is what extremely wealthy people look like when they choose to live quietly, and it almost always outlasts the version that cannot afford to be anything other than loud. Which of these players impressed you the most? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you want to see how this same discipline is reshaping Black wealth across America, click the video on your screen right now. Subscribe for more deep dives into the wealth stories most people never get close enough to actually see.